Here you go.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order. It is a little after 7, and Susan, if you would call the roll.
Certainly. Brian Collegian.
Brian, just let me know he can't make it.
Oh, okay. Mark Macchio.
Here.
Jim Quish.
I'm here.
Bob Sadi.
Here.
Mark Zaharidis.
Here.
Dave Selkis.
Do I have to answer? I'm here.
I see you.
Okay.
David, if you would put the agenda up on the shared screen.
I will.
Please.
Here we go.
So I think it's doesn't have to be a super long meeting, but as we all know, we decided that the function of the regulation subcommittee will be a little bit changed because most everything we're going to do will be in front of the whole committee. And what I'm thinking about and looking for your input is to go ahead and have a meeting like this, where we prepare to make sure that we have, either experts or we have data, or we just sort of prepare for the full board to see something or hear something.
Mhm.
And maybe it's a strategy. Like for this, I think the housing and affordability of housing in Milford is a fairly long-term endeavor, and sort of, I think this group, in my mind, should probably put together the roadmap. And then once we get to the full meetings, they'll have like, all right, meeting 1 is general discussion. Meeting 2 is bring in some local developers. Meeting, however we want to do it. I think that we have some concern that, too many cooks spoil the soup. So if we can, as a smaller group of cooks, kind of set the agenda in a more precise manner for the full board, I think it'll help the full board. Not that input that they give us during a full meeting doesn't come back to this board and we either alter our plan or add to it or gather further information that is requested by the full board, or if we have, when to have public hearings. So I think it's sort of an open discussion here for us to kind of put together, the roadmap for how we want to address housing. And again, anytime anybody, in these meetings, please just speak up. You don't have to, nothing formal, just speak out whenever you want. And in a meeting like this, if there are specific things that you feel individually should be addressed, then we can request from staff to get some more information and then put that on the agenda for either the next or a subsequent meeting of the whole board. So it's going to be kind of my vision is kind of a back and forth, but open up to anybody on the committee that has a gut feeling or have thought about this and
Chairman Quish,
how to proceed.
Chairman Quish, how you doing?
Yep.
I have both a gut feeling and some thoughts. And taking your lead.
You scared him away. I'm not sure if it was your gut feeling or your thoughts.
Both. And
He's going to write stuff down.
Pencil and paper.
So, Jim, I think that, one of the things that we recognize and the board has done for a number of years, but is becoming really to the forefront, is the issue of housing and it being available for citizens that need to come and live in Milford. I've changed some of the words, but I think that one of the things that we should consider probably within a month or so is what is the scope of our endeavor. And for example, we can invite all sorts of public individuals to speak. I don't know if it's appropriate. We can invite public groups to speak. I don't know if that's appropriate yet. We could certainly invite experts and talk to land developers, but your first thoughts are great. The question is there a limit to who we have speaking before the subcommittee initially? Or do we work and try to find out what a specific plan is? So I think these are just some of the thoughts I have. You've done a great job in a leadership position. And then maybe we can get some ideas from the other members of the board on this subcommittee. What is the scope of what we're looking to do? And should we narrow the scope at all? The two areas that I'm talking about.
One thing as a clarification of what my intent was is probably not having experts come to the subcommittee, but to the full committee. So I think it would be in my mind, and we could change it. It's not in stone, but my thought was we say, all right, let's get some lawyers or some developers or whatever, and have them come up with a presentation for the whole board. But I think your point of defining a scope is, a great starting point.
I'll
Yes.
jump on the bandwagon and go, I agree.
Yeah, please do.
No, I agree. No, I agree with everything.
Oh, okay. I think we can work on that right now.
Yeah.
We can come up with some things we have. So I think number one is, well, I don't know if it's that simple. Well, just blue sky in it. There would be, the question is, how can we get affordability in Milford? And I think one of the goals is going to be to do it in a way that 830G doesn't do it for us, where we have, like Meadowside Road, where you have a single family house 2 years ago, and now there's 14 apartments. So that's the 840G has been a nemesis to a lot of neighborhoods. So one of the goals, I don't know if we actually publish it that way, is that it's to get rid of 830G. But in order to do that, we have to reach 10% affordable, deed restricted, or whatever the rest of the criteria is for to satisfy that. So there'd be a couple of ways to do it. One way that I see is to put a carrot to or put a requirement for multifamily. So require all multifamily developments to have an affordable component. And I created a spreadsheet at one point. I think I shared it. I still have it, so that we can sort of look at it and say that, okay, if you're building 4 units, maybe you don't need any affordable. Maybe you do. But at one point, maybe anything over 6, minimum 1, and then up to just random numbers up to 20, you have to have 11% or 10% plus 1. So that we don't allow developments to come in to town and put us backwards, right? So when we had 180 units built on Plains Road, that just overstepped like 10 of the small developments in terms of how many affordable units we have. So just to review, we have to have 10% affordability, 10% of the units available or occupied in Milford that are deed restricted affordable. And then 830G is not in effect, and developers can't come in and skirt all of our regulations, any of our regulations. The only thing we have there is health and safety from, experts, whether it's the police, the fire, health department, or outside experts that can somehow weigh in and say that's detrimental to the health or safety of the public. So we can have a tiered basis for all multifamily is one strategy. And then we discuss and agree on what that is. And I think that's where the developers will weigh in. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do anything if you're asking me for 20% on a small development, and still adhere with all the regulations. We can add a carrot, like maybe a height restriction. We can, if you build 20% affordable, we will relax the height restriction. And I'm not saying these are good ideas. I'm just throwing them out as what ifs. So we have the stick that says you must do it no matter what, But then we have a carrot. Yes, you can have, we'll relax parking, we'll relax a setback, or we'll relax something. We'll put some kind of a carrot in to help the developers. And obviously, we don't want to give away the farm, but we do have to make it realistic. And, you know, they'll know better and they'll push the envelope, I would guess. You know, if they would be happy with it be over 20 units, they'd probably be okay with it over 15. Just they don't want to give away the farm. They're negotiators by trade. So that would be a consideration that we would have there. 2, we can designate areas, like we have the office design district that is coming under scrutiny. We had the subway property. I think we're going to have another one soon where they're looking for a change to one of those office parks. And I think we all understand that office park, you know, God, there's hundreds and hundreds of acres that are office parks. And what's it called, David?
The DO zone or the
office zone, whatever.
I think, yeah, we have several. We have an actual office zone, it's like an OD zone, and then we have 2 different DO zones, which are design office districts. So and they're all more or less in the Wheelers Farms Wolf Harbor corridor up there by the Parkway
And Bick Drive.
and Bick Drive. Yeah.
So there is an opportunity. I think we're going to have a zone change in front of us from someone who has a specific idea in mind. But we might be able to come up with something that we collectively want to discuss with the board. How do we think that this zone should be changed to better accommodate Milford's needs in general? And we could add housing and with affordable, and maybe even a broader affordability component than just, if in fact we had a global anything multifamily, you have to have some affordability. And then you have, like, if you're rezoning the office, one of the office districts or all of them, to add full 830G compliance or somewhere in between. You know, I would say the developers are going to tell us at a certain scale, it's difficult to do 830G, not to do 830G, because they're going to need some accommodation. But, you know, the specifics of that will come out as we do it. So I think there's one, we can do something on a citywide scale. 2, we can look at different zones, and it could be one is the one of 3 office design districts. Then we have the commercial corridor districts that we can somehow promote mixed use. So you can have you know, you can have a real estate office or a dentist on the downstairs, you know, the street side floor, and then up above you can have some housing. Seems to be urban planning in general favors mixed use, and it adds to walkability. Like Devon, for example, could be more walkable with some more units. Restaurants, you know, promote restaurants. It seems to be a draw. So, and I don't know that we do it all at once, but there's a number of zones that maybe, yeah, Mark.
Oh, sorry, I just caught Jim.
Oh, I saw the little yellow box over you. But anyway, these are some of the ideas of looking at the various zones. David, what zones prohibit housing?
So a zone that prohibits housing that is ripe to be redeveloped is the CDD3, because that is between downtown and Route 1. So it's Bridgeport Avenue, all the way down to where it meets CDD2, which is sort of the beginning of Devon. So that whole area that's walkable from downtown, you know, near Milford Hospital, along, you know, what do we have down there? We've got, you know, the old car wash that's there, and there's, you know.
Yeah, so it's from Stop and Shop to the hospital.
Yep, from Stop and Shop to the hospital. And we identified that in our POCD as an area that's, probably ripe for a regulation change to allow housing. And
And it's very close to,
the train station, yeah.
yeah, and the housing that's behind it. The
Yeah.
brick
Oh, yeah.
buildings was like, I don't know how many, 600 or something.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is to why, when that corridor was created, and that was created right before I joined the city, was I think at that time we still had some viable industrial uses along there, and they've transformed into commercial uses, but they're not the industrial uses that they once upon a time were. So there's really no reason not to obviously promote better development and more of a mixed use. I mean, like you said, it's almost silly not to have housing there when literally one parcel behind the zone line are residential uses. So
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a really great entry from the south or from the west into downtown.
oh yeah.
And there was that one big factory there. I don't know if that would be, well, it used to be a factory, but now it's some fulfillment and some offices from the shoe company and yeah.
Yeah, that's changed multiple times since I've been here. So when I got here, it was empty. Then it became a building supply warehouse, and then after that, it became a parts supply warehouse. And I don't know if that's still there or not. And that's the last time I tracked it, because that's the last time they came in to ask for anything.
I think there's multiple tenants in there now. I know that I looked at some space there for something at one point, and it was a number of sizes available, you know.
And then right down the street from it, the other big industrial building there is I think one of the most fascinating things we have in town that people don't know about and would have no reason to know about, but they build the stage sets for Broadway.
Yes.
So I forgot their name, but that's what they do. And they, I remember when they love the location because they have workers who can take the train from, anywhere to get there. And, they build the sets and then they ship them down to Broadway for the latest and greatest Broadway plays. Very specialized.
That is Roadworks, I
Bridgeport
believe.
Steel. Oh, sorry, Susan.
I believe that's Roadworks, David.
No.
Is that the place? No.
No. That's a
okay.
That's a parts place on the other side of town. Yeah, this is called like Show Something, or they have something entertaining in their name. It's like Show Something, I think. I don't remember.
So would your instinct be, David, that we would have to have a zone change? We would have to have a language change for each zone.
Yeah, I mean that's a very specific corridor. So the language that we come up there with for there could probably be most easily applied to any of the corridor zones. We have 5 corridor zones. Whether or not you want to increase density or whatever the carrots are that you want to add, could also apply to the CDD2, which allows housing, the CDD1, which allows housing. So it's so on the Boston Post Road and the CDD1, which would be between Stop and Shop and say the I-95 Cloverleaf by the mall, that's all CDD1. And that actually, there are plazas there that have housing. You might not know it. I mean, I didn't really realize it until I started poking around, but you have some 2-story shopping plazas that, have your commercial on the first floor, residential on the second. And clearly, I mean, I would call it underutilized because, if you're only going 2 stories, and I would have to look at the regulations, that's probably why they only went up 2 stories. Why couldn't you go up 3 or 4 or more on Route 1 to provide more housing? I mean, like you said, that could be a great carrot if we're limiting the height in that zone, especially since it's on the Post Road. And
the thing is, housing fits so nicely because the traffic is different, right? So you have these stores up and down that are
Yeah.
open at 10,
Right,
and people are going out the door before 10 generally if they're going somewhere else to work or whatever,
right,
and
right.
then these stores are closing at 10. So, you know, the last shoppers and the workers are using the roads after that. So it's a little bit symbiotic and
Yeah.
whatever. It distributes the traffic over a greater
But
time span.
yeah, the largest one that I'm aware of is actually I think in the CDD3, not CDD3. So I think it's the CD1, CD2. The plaza that Bin 100 is in. You know, that is probably the largest plaza with housing on top. There's like, I think there's 20 units up there, maybe 30, you know, spread over since it's a, you know,
Right.
again, 2 stories. And, you know,
And there's actually one on the post road there that has no commercial component down between that property and Naugatuck Avenue on the right. There's looks like maybe 8 townhouses or something.
there's several. Yeah, there's several because, you know, the zoning allowed that. There's, I want to say there's at least 2 of those complexes on the corner, one of them like on Dayton Street and one on, I forgot past it, but yeah. So there's choice, but I mean, the opportunity is just fabulous for the CDD3, and the opportunity to work with developers on the office design districts, I mean, is great. And you know, anyone who brings anything in, you know, as a proposal, you know, the board can really negotiate, because I mean, you don't have to approve anything unless you like it. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that
I agree with your thought, Jim, to have every multifamily development have some sort of an affordable component to it, because the state is jamming affordability down our throats, right? They're basically forcing it on us. So it would be stupid for us to approve any multifamily development without having some affordable component, like you said, because then it takes us in reverse and we get farther away from the 10%, right? So the only question I have to that, is it legal? Are we legally able to put a regulation or whatever the heck you want to call this that says, if you are going to build an affordable development, you must have, you know, X% of it affordable?
the answer to that, Mark,
I
is
don't
yes.
know the answer to that.
It's yes, that you can do that. You can have regulations that do that.
Okay, so then, I mean, I think this is a no-brainer. It's something we should do quickly before any more developments get in and cause us to go the other way.
So keep in mind, it's a numbers game. So unless you're getting 50%, or actually 50% or more of those units in whatever complex you're talking about, you are never going to catch up.
So then there's your answer. Perfect. Then it's 50%. And if you don't like it, listen.
It should be more than 50. It would have to be more than 50%, because
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Come up with whatever that number is, David. I'm not smart enough to understand that. That's why you're here. But honestly, whatever that number is, that's what we require, because it's not our fault. It's the state that has this statute called 830G that's requiring this. So we're just taking the state's lead. And if you want to build multifamily development in our city, this is what you have to do in order for us to get to that 10% someday, which will probably be a long, long time.
yeah, I mean, the thing that's good, the thing that we could also do is there are developers that develop on tax credits and grants, and it's a pretty long process, but they do 100% affordability, right? These workforce developments. So we can maybe in a separate brushstroke, we can offer carrots to these housing partnerships, and politically we can push for a quasi-public housing. You know, we do have whatever we have, but it's not promoting, it's not generating any new units. So, and that's really where the people freak out. Oh, it's going to be 100% affordable and it's in my backyard, and they're going to be horrible people and they're going to leave their tricycles out in the front yard. And, so we have a bit of a public relations problem there. But, you look throughout all New England, and they're in every town and every city, and they're pretty freaking nice these days.
The best way to get probably the most units would be, and this sort of ties into what David Fink said when he gave his presentation last time, is, it's a numbers game for the developer. So, if land is provided to the developer that costs nothing, then it's much easier for them to give you lots of affordable units, versus if they have to pay a lot for land, because that's just another cost they have to have. And then building on what Jim said, it's no other municipalities that have required a percentage of the units to be affordable. It's very much in the vein of what Jim was saying, where it's a graduated number based on the number of units. And if someone's going to build 10 units in Milford, you say, well, 5 of them have to be affordable or 6 of them have to be affordable. They're never going to get built. I mean, the numbers just aren't going to work. So, be careful on when we create something, and this is where the dialogue that we should be having with the developers, both large developers and the smaller developers that we have, is going to be important, because they're going to tell us. I mean, just like I don't know if anyone saw the video. I sent the link to this committee from the Council of Governments that had the recent forum, where they had a bunch of big developers from Connecticut and beyond, who spoke to them on, this is what they look for, and this is how you're able to negotiate with us, because these are the things we need to make something work. And however you want to move the components around to make it work, they'll work with you, but it always comes down to what's the overall cost. And a city like Norwalk, I think they don't have their 10%. I don't think. I'd have to double check that. I don't remember. I looked, but they just built like 100 units that are all affordable, and they did it because the city gave the developer the land, and that was a choice that the city made. We want to have housing here, and it was in a good location with access to lots of things, and they got a bunch of affordable units. So I'm not sure. We may or may not have land to do that, but I mean that's a strategy.
Yeah, land and political will, right? So
exactly.
We do have blighted property, and we do have opportunity as a city, but it's political will, and whether I know that there's a plot of land that I think was a dry cleaner on that Bridgeport Avenue, on the right-hand side coming into town, that was a little bit stinky. I think there's a little bit of a plume under that whole area. So
that's actually the new proposed site for the Bethel shelter. Bethel shelter.
Okay, and there's also a health department was interested in that too. So but there's other land there too, and I think that your instinct is good, that if you have a auto repair facility, and it's you could just get a much less expensive land in the same amount of business. So some of these properties could be more valuable with the addition of the mixed use component. Do we all kind of agree that the housing, if we're changing zones, does it have to be mixed use, or could we could have residential only? Say, obviously each zone might be a little different, but if we're thinking about from Stop and Shop to the hospital, could we have stuff that's just 100% residential? Could we take that old factory and make that just apartments with?
Well, you can, I mean, you can, I guess the question is, in a lot of our zones, we have different uses, and you can have them as standalone uses, and in some zones you can mix the uses. So it's really up to you. I mean, I'd be just a little cautious in that if for instance, and I'm not saying anyone's proposing this, you decide, that entire zone shouldn't be commercial industrial anymore. It should be strictly housing. Well, in one fell swoop, you can do that, but you've just rendered everything along that zone pre-existing non-conforming. So,
So yeah, I got to allow it, but yeah. So to Mark's point though, how do we move forward, and how do we get the biggest result in the shortest amount of time? I think we keep this conversation going, and open it up to the committee. But if we want something concrete to happen sooner rather than later, I think if this committee agrees that we go into the next full meeting with some kind of a framework for discussion on, let's make every multifamily residential alone or residential mixed use have an affordability component, and have that be up for discussion. And then the question we would ask here is, do we invite specific, first of all, can we say invite a couple developers to weigh in on it? And can we get that done between now and the next meeting?
I will tell you, you won't get it done between now and the next meeting. I'm going on vacation, among other things. So, and I'm substituting for Stephen. And then as we discussed, we should, if we're going to have outside experts come in to talk to the board, we would probably be more successful doing it as a remote meeting. And we can have a full remote board meeting. We can just,
We can have a special meeting.
Yeah, special meeting. That way the whole board can attend, and we'll have a better opportunity to get developers and others, if there's if there's land use attorneys who specialize in this as well, as we had discussed, to come to a remote meeting versus coming to Milford to sit down and just have a broad discussion with the board. I mean, that just food for thought. I want this to be successful, so I want to make it as easy as possible for people to participate.
So Jim, the one thing that again, I think it's a great idea that we try to do this. And I took that tour last year. We ended up in Wallingford, where, and I mentioned this before, the developers were on board with town government. So it was a very easy process, not necessarily everybody's happy with it, was fine, whereas Milford is consistently against that. I just am concerned that if we do the zone change and say that it has to be X% for each, units, whether it's 10-4, which are all great ideas, that the developers can say, fine, we're just going to use 830G. We can do whatever we want to now. We'll just do 830G. We're not going to follow the zone change, even if we do that. I'm just mindful. I don't know if it's going to occur, but I know that something we should be making sure that the developers are on board. It makes it a lot easier for us to get that zone change through and have developments appropriately that are, I would call, available and affordable, because again, that term affordable may or may not be the same as 830G. We have to consider that also, how we're going to decide that, but just be mindful of that.
Good point.
Hey, Mark, you put your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, why don't we just change the language, go 100% into whatever it is, and put a lot of red tape where it costs them a lot of money. If they want to put something somewhere, they would really want to do it. Why not just make it where, I mean, I don't know if you can even put taxes on different areas, and make it where if you're going to come in here and try and whack us, there'll be so much language inside the zones that you have to comply to.
Well, that's
it would push away the want to come into Milford, because the reason why people are coming into Milford is because, it's affordable and people are trying to make money. So they're businessmen, right? their bottom line is why they're coming into there, because they're trying to make profit. If they can't make a profit, then they'll just leave.
There's no red tape that this board can create to keep someone from coming in and developing under 830G. Because with 830G, they don't have to follow zoning. That's the whole point. So unless there is zoning that provides them with an incentive to do something somewhere else, there's no amount of red tape in the world that will prevent them. As Bob just said, we can come up with any regulations you want. You can make them as easy or as restrictive. If they don't like it, doesn't matter, because they can ignore regulations and just go and build. Period. That's the whole point of 830G. It's to do exactly
Exactly. It's to stop cities from putting up roadblocks.
exactly. That's it. That's the whole purpose of it.
Our 830G overrides local municipal zoning regulations, unfortunately. And that's why these things get jammed down our throat. It's a state statute. It took me a long time to understand it too. We basically have very little reason to say no to an 830G proposal. And it's what health, safety, and welfare, right, David, is basically, and even that is,
And
I mean,
it's a
so
different
rare.
Yeah, and it's a different standard than the regular health, safety, and welfare. The courts have told us time and time again that the city, it's up to the city, not the applicant, to show that the health, safety, and welfare issues that you're citing as the reason of denying this are significantly more important than the need for affordable housing. And it's a very tough threshold. We have never.
And it has to be in the record, and it has to be by experts.
Yeah.
We found that because we got spanked a couple times, and we had all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, except it was anecdotal testimony and not professional expert testimony. It was in the record. It was stated at the time we made the motion, and we still got spanked.
Yeah. Yeah.
David, can you explain what you said earlier about if our threshold is 10%?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be 50% in order for us to gain traction? Doesn't it just have to be over 10% in order to gain traction on that?
No, it's because we're talking about the 10% threshold is 10% of the entire housing stock of the city.
Correct.
So, as an example, you're going to build 10 new units. Right now under 830G, 30% of those 10 units would be 3 units. So now you've just added 3 affordable units to try to get to up your 10% of the overall, but you've also just approved 7 new market rate units. You're actually behind now.
Okay.
Now that math is wrong.
No,
it's not. Yeah, well, no. So let's look at it simply, right?
Yeah.
So we have 100 units total in town.
Okay.
Okay. So we need 10 units to be affordable.
Okay.
Okay. So now we have a 10 unit new project.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have 110 units.
How many are affordable?
Okay. So now we have 3 affordable plus the 10. We have 13 affordable and 107 units.
I lost you there on
Okay,
the map.
so I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Right now we have 100 units.
Yeah.
How many are affordable out of
Um,
those 100?
yeah, good question. That has to be in the mix.
Yeah.
So say it's a 200 unit and we have 1 unit. So we're under the 10%. Oh no, that would be 1%. 100 units, we have 5 units we have 100 units now, 5 or 6 units, because we're at about 6%, are affordable.
So let's
Okay. So now we have a new, so there's 94 market and 6 affordable. Now we have a 10 unit subdivision. So we're going to have 3 of those are going to be affordable. So now we're going to have 9 affordable and 101 market rate.
yeah, that's incorrect. So let me put it this way.
Well, let's do it with real math, not anecdotal.
Okay, let's do it with real math. So we have 100 units. So we have 100 units, and none of them are affordable.
No, we have 6 are affordable.
Okay, so we have 100 units. What's the overall housing stock that we have? Are we talking we're only 100?
100 units.
Okay, so Milford only has 100 houses. Okay, 100 dwelling units, 100 units. So
94 market and 6 affordable.
94 market and 6 affordable. So this is a new project that's coming in above the 100.
Yep.
Okay, so if you're going above 100 and you're saying, and the new project is how many?
10 units. And
It's
so
10
we're going to have
units.
7 units of market.
Yeah.
Giving
So
us
that-
101. And now we're going to have 9 units of affordable.
So now you have 107 market rate units, and you have how many affordable?
9.
That's going to be less than the 10% that you need.
Right, but it's going to be more than the 6% that we have now.
But that doesn't matter because I mean, yeah, you're getting more units. Every affordable project we have has more units, but for every single family house that's built, every apartment that's built in town, every project, every 830G project where 30% of the units are added, there's
But
seven-
no one
seven-
development's going to get us over 10%. So
Oh, right.
right. So if you do this 20 times, we're going to end up with 30 more. If you do it 20 times, we're going to be closer to 10% than we are. David, I'll make a spreadsheet for you. I've had this argument a whole bunch of times. I'll make a spreadsheet for you and do it how 1 10-unit project affects it how much, and then I'll do it 20 times over. And by the end of the day, we're going to have 9% better than 6%. And if you do it 50 times, you're over the 10%.
But every one of the non-market and every one of the units that's not counted as affordable counts against you.
No, I
So-
know that.
Right.
I know that. So as long as you're moving in the right direction, if you end up with, I'll do the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Yes, yes.
I'll do it for everybody.
Yeah,
I'll do it for everybody because that argument's come up before, and I went to the Excel.
Every, even single family homes count towards
correct.
as the
Because
the
it's
housing stock.
it's 10% of the total housing stock. That's the thing. 20 years ago, we were pushing 7% of the overall housing stock was affordable. Now it's 5 and change.
There any current developments in town that we can change to affordable, or no, that can't be done?
After the fact, anybody can convert their units if they want to. If a developer wants to do it, there's no incentive for them to do that. We can't dictate to them, oh, hey.
Right. But the city can.
No, the city can't.
Well, the city could. The city could,
If it
let's
was
say you
new.
own 100 units, you could say, if you designate all of your units affordable, we can give you a tax break. I mean, we can't do it, but the alderman
Oh,
can.
well, that's different. That's after the
Yeah,
fact. That's after this
exactly.
board. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
the alderman could do it, but not the P&Z.
oh, yeah, I mean,
We'd
other,
have to get them on board with the whole plan too.
other cities have gotten developers to do 100% affordable. And they do it with different levels. I mean, they'll go with a certain level of 80% of area income, 60%. Some do it down to 40%, for a number of units. So you have an entire spectrum of people being served. And in exchange, they get tax breaks, they get tax abatements for a number of years, and they can make the numbers work, and everybody's happy. The city gets the units, the tax, the developer gets a break on the taxes. And that's a beautiful case of a mutual, operation of government.
One thing that's interesting too is that these affordable units can be condominiums.
Yeah, that's just a type of ownership. Yeah, I mean, we do. Yeah.
So they're not rental. So it's less strenuous on the city or anyone to track it to make sure that the person in there 8 years from now is still income eligible to get the discount.
Actually, it's more difficult. It's
Okay,
one-
well, let's get someone to talk to us about that, because I think that could be a carrot for developers that want to build and flip, and it's better for the tax base in Milford, and it promotes home ownership. So
Yeah.
if when we're looking at experts, if we could find a real estate attorney or
I have
somebody
yeah.
who could speak to that, because I think it adds value to Milford, and still, I mean, you still have a 20-year or a 40-year affordability, which would be your housing costs can't be more than 28% of your income or something.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Of the average income. Anyway, if someone could explain that formula, I think it may be something that would be another tool in the box to say, okay, developers, you want to do this? Well, why don't we do it and you get out, as opposed to collecting rents? And now we have more home ownership, more human investment in the community. And I think that, people that are trying to downsize and maybe, go to a warmer climate for part of the year in our, the boomers are getting ready to do that, and they could still have a foothold here. And hopefully the young family members can afford to stay in Milford, and, sort of add that continuity aspect to the town. I have nothing wrong with new people moving in, but, there's a lot of multi-generations here in Milford. And if we can help their best interests, then I think we're doing something good.
You had mentioned earlier, we don't want to, and I'm just trying to understand what you meant by that. Just because if we're going to be making some decisions, I'd like to understand it. You said you don't want to force them into turning it into an 830G that wasn't originally.
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. So
No,
I
Bob,
think that,
Mr. Sadie said that.
oh,
Yeah,
Sorry.
so just again, my quick thought, Mark. If we change the rules and the developers don't like it, they said if they're gonna be forced to add affordable housing components, they said, I might as well go 830G. I don't have to follow any zoning regulations. It might be easier for them. It might be less expensive. Again, just a quick thought off the top of my head. I'm not suggesting it. I just want to make sure that we have that covered. That's, so we're not forcing them out of it.
And I was just trying to understand it. So I don't know, is that, and I guess that's kind of what we probably want then, because the state is making us do it anyway. We almost want them to turn it into 830G.
Well, what we want to do is I think that what I found in this tour, again, I don't mean to belabor it, but when you have developers working with the municipalities, it's easier to get affordable housing done. As David talked about, Noah gave them the property, got 100 units. So we just want to keep that in mind. As Jim said, we need the carrot first before the stick.
Gotcha.
And I guess he went to get some carrot juice.
Yeah, and if they don't like the carrot, what Bob is saying is they're just going to develop it anyway under 830G. So that's the balance, the balance of the carrot. It's got to be a good enough carrot for them to go, hey, yeah, we can work with you over here, versus, well, you've just created all this red tape and made it worse, so we're just going to do our 830G.
They're going to do what they want to do anyway. They don't care about us. They don't. They're going to do whatever makes them the most amount of money. And if it's not 830G, it's going to be that way. And if it's 830G, they're going to apply for it that way. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. I hear you.
So, we're the ones that are taking the brunt of all this here. We're basically bending over, and they're doing whatever they want to do. So to have some sort of something in there that says, well, if you want to build something, you're going to have to do it our way, isn't such a bad thing either.
yeah. And it may be that we, if we look at the neighboring communities, I don't think they have, this could be an analysis too, is that, where this developer has to keep building or else he's out of business, right? So where else do you go? Do you go to West Haven? Do you go to Derby? Do you go to Stratford? you know, where the rents aren't as strong, and the taxes are higher in like West Haven and stuff, and the rents aren't as strong in the surrounding areas. So we are desirable. We do have a couple things that are weird. I don't really fully understand, where we have approved some 830G applications and they haven't been built yet. I mean, we've got 600 or 800 units that were approved that the ground hasn't broken, I think.
Yeah, and and when you think about it, that's a very interesting observation. Pretty much all of the ones that have been built are in the between 6 and 12 to 14 unit range. For the most part, approved and built. And the two that you're talking about were big, or those would have been our first and our largest projects, where you were looking at over 100 units for each of those projects, and they were not built. And
it's a simple answer. They bought a single family. They bought a piece of property in a single family neighborhood for the price of a single family lot, and they crammed 12 or 14 units in there and are getting rents on, okay, let's say it's whatever percentage, 30%. Let's just say they put, I don't know, what's the math on that, please? They're getting market rate for 12 of them, and they're getting under market, affordable for 2 of them. They've still just made a ton of money. So those are the ones that are going to be the targets in the future still for us.
Yeah, and it's cheap construction. It's a cheaper construction than the kind of construction.
Those other guys paid a ton of money for those big pieces of property, and they have to put up 300 units plus a lot of money. So I think that's the answer. It's just sheer economics. Jim, you probably understand that better than anybody.
So once we really get our arms around how even incremental improvements, and I will create a spreadsheet and show us. So these 200 or 300 units, with so if let's say it's 200 units, there's 60 that are affordable. So if that didn't pencil for them, and first of all, they were probably contract buyers and didn't buy it, but they did due diligence. I don't know. We can ask Tom Lynch, what does the due diligence cost? Did they spend $100,000 or $200,000 on engineering and lawyers' fees to get us to the point where you had a 200 unit 830G in front of the board? Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 200. I don't know. But they burned that 200 and they're just holding on to it to find a developer. Sometimes people just go in and do due diligence and they want to flip it. And sometimes they're actually builders. But so that's the question that the developers can talk to us about. Is up on is 30% too much? And if we got to that size and we were only doing 20%, would they build it? And if we gave them similar give back, so to speak, similar carrots that 830G did in areas we want, and 20% still gets us more down the road, then somebody could build that 200 units with 20%, not 30%, get us closer to the goal and get them actually built. Because approved is one thing. It doesn't count when the state counts them. It's only built, and COs, certificates of occupancy, have to be issued for these to be on the new count.
And Jim, they would be following the appropriate zoning regulations.
Yeah, or when we go to the office district, say, for example, or one of the 3 office districts, we say, okay, well, you know what, we want to promote affordability. If you agree to 20%, we're going to let you go 48 feet in the air instead of 36 feet. So they can build higher. They can have other some incentives, so we can create the incentives rather than the state saying you can skirt every single zoning regulation. But we can create incentives, and it can be per district, But I think that, to Mark's point, let's grab the lower hanging fruit, and So if we do something for all multifamily, and it takes us, a couple months, whatever, we get to a point where we have new regulations, then at that point, or once we start circulating that, or we've already had the public hearings, we're getting ready, we can create a kind of priority list, right? We can look at individual districts, and we can address that. What do we think's appropriate in CDD 3? What's appropriate in CDD 2? And they could all be different. And it could be the case, at David's instinct, that we look at that. I think is that CDD 1, Bridgeport Ave, you said?
That's a CDD 3, and the Post Road in that general vicinity is CDD
So
1.
if we pick one and we change it, and we try to make sure that the language is, if not super tight for the rest of the commercial corridor districts, they're pretty close, so that we don't really have to reinvent the wheel. We have to do it for each district because the districts are different and you have to have a different regulation. So if we get one that's sort of the broadest, then we have a template that's maybe 80% done for the next 3. And then we look at, and we could look at the office districts at the same time. I think we have bandwidth to do more than one district at one time too. But I think, Mark, your instinct is let's get something in that gives a bit of a carrot to the developers and begin that conversation with them. And if we have bring this to the full board on the next meeting, what would we be able to have for them to consider? I could have the spreadsheet for everybody. I could have what else, David, could you support us with any other cities that have done citywide things that we could use as just an example of so-and-so did it this way, so-and-so did it that way.
Yeah,
and just begin the conversation to make sure that, hey, they may have insights that we haven't thought of and are valuable. So that's the whole point of the collective.
Yeah, the common thing, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with what's the most common. The most common thing is a tiered system. So, Fairfield has I believe it's an across the board requirement. I think it was either 15 or 20 units or more. You have to provide a particular amount of affordable housing, which they've used around.
And I know that you're doing your job and Stephen's job. Is there any way you could reach back out to
Dave?
to Scrog to say, hey, can you give me a quick white paper that I can distribute to the full board for our next meeting to discuss? I
can ask, sure.
Yeah. So if we have something for them, and then we start the conversation about the various districts that we have, and see what kind of, if we can collectively put a priority list on it. So if you would prepare yourself to discuss the existing on each of the CDD zones, and then we can open up the discussion on where we think the low-hanging fruit is, and sort of run parallel paths, maybe.
Sure. I mean, I can easily talk about the existing CDD zones next week. I can ask, since I asked Scrog, I'm going to be asking Dave Fink, since he's their guy, if he's got something that we can distribute, because he should know what other towns are doing.
Good.
Yeah, and again, we also, we got some people who Mr. Sadi has left the building and wants to come back in. So here we go. If people want to get sort of a preview of what the private sector is looking for in discussions with towns and what their ability to do is, I'd refer you to that link that I sent to the housing workshop that the Council of Governments did.
Right, and that everyone has that link, correct?
Yeah, I sent it to everyone on this committee. I can send it out ahead of time.
Oh,
to
please do.
everybody on the
Please send
board.
that out. If you could do that even tomorrow to give people the
Yeah,
weekend to look at it and,
yeah, and we'll even put a link on the agenda, Susan, and that will be under that section, so they can, click on that and get to it.
okay, yeah. But I mean, if the full board has it
Yeah.
in the next day or so, then if they have time over the weekend or whatever to
Yeah.
listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think that the goal would be to get some direction from the whole board on next steps for a regulation change across the board for multifamily, and maybe to prioritize the various districts to address individually, to add affordability and to add either carrots or sticks, however you feel. I think the carrots are going to work better, but the sticks are there because the sticks say you have to have a percentage. And but any other suggestions for us to move out of tonight with, I would love to hear. Okay, well, we do have minutes. Do we normally approve the minutes? I forget, or do we just
Yeah,
file them?
Yeah.
usually approve them.
Mark Marchio raised his hand to make the motion to approve the minutes. I saw his hand raised. Mark
Okay, motion to approve second.
Zarid is seconding it. Okay.
All those opposed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Anything else before we ramble on, Rose?
I don't,
Okay,
not for me. I mean, I don't know anyone else. I'm
well,
good.
thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Have a good
Thank you.
evening. See
See
everyone.
everybody next week.
Yeah, see everyone next week.